Hello and how are you? Welcome again to the economics related concepts. As we discussed in the previous videos, that this is the theory of demand and supply. This topic is about the theories of demand and supply, and in the previous topics and the previous videos we covered the theory of demand, and today we are going to look at the theory of supply. My name is Vincent Stanislaus. I will be taking you through the concepts of supply. Okay, to start with, let us define the concept. So we'll start by defining the concept of supply, the definition. What is supply? What is supply? This is just a normal concept. It is just a normal concept. You can define it basing on your own understanding. When we talk of supply, we mean the quantities of goods and services that has been supplied to the market for consumption. That can be a layman understanding of the concept. But for supply to take place, there should be some factors to be considered. For example, there should be a good or service, goods and a good or service, good or service to be supplied. There should be a good or service to be supplied. But to whom are we supplying? We are supplying this good or service to the consumer. So there should be consumers, buyers, people to purchase these goods or services. But also there should be, and of course when we talk of the consumers, we mean consumers who are willing and able to purchase the goods to be supplied. But of course we should have started with this person. There should be a supplier. This is the person who is willing and able to supply those goods and services to the market. But they cannot supply unless there is a defined price. There is a defined price for that commodity, price for the good or service. So there should be the price. But also for supply to take place, there should be a defined area or market. Market is just the area. It can be on phone, it can be a geographical boundary, it can be personal contacts, etc., etc. So there should be a defined area, or there should be a market. But also we are saying that there should be a defined or a specific time. So when these factors have been considered, supply can take place. So producers and consumers will normally observe these conditions. When these conditions are met, then the supply will take place in the market. The supplier will be willing and able to supply the goods to the market, and the consumer will be willing and able to consume that good because these conditions have been met. The consumer must be willing and able to purchase the commodity, and the supplier must be willing and able to supply the goods to the market. Therefore, let's now come back to the definition. So what is supply? Supply in economics understanding is the willingness and ability of a producer or a supplier to supply different quantities of a good or service to the market at the ruling marketplace. That is how we define supply: the willingness and ability of a supplier to supply different goods and services to the market at the ruling market price, and at a specific period of, at a defined time frame. Therefore, this is how we can briefly define the concept of supply. That is the definition. So what are the factors that affect the supply for the commodity? So this is the next part that we are going to look at, the factors that affect the supply for the commodity. There are many factors that affect the supply for the commodity. So producers or suppliers, when they supply goods to the market, they observe some factors. There are some factors to be considered before you supply the goods to the market. Okay, so one of the factors is the objective of the firm. One of the factors is the objective of the firm. The first factor is the objective of the firm. Of course, we are going to look at the law of supply. After I have explained these factors, we are going to look at the law of supply, which will be guiding us throughout this subtopic, the law of supply. But I was talking about the objective of the firm. Objective of the firm. Objective of the firm. But I think it is important to start by looking at the law of supply. It is important to start by looking at the law of supply before we consider these factors, because, as I said, this law of supply will be guiding us throughout. So let me first of all start by explaining to you the law of supply. What is the law governing the supply for goods and services? Then later we look at these factors. We look at the factors. Okay. So what does the law say? The law of supply. The law of supply is trying to explain the relationship between the price and the quantity supplied. Price and the quantity supplied. So it is portraying, the law is portraying the relationship between the price and the quantity supplied. Now what does it say? The law states that the higher the price, this arrow means that the price is increasing. So the higher the price, the higher the quantity supplied. The higher the quantity supplied. When there is higher price in the market, when the price for goods and services in the market is high, we expect that suppliers, those who are supplying the goods to the market, will supply more because the price is high. So when there is high price in the market, always suppliers will tend to supply more of a good or services, and the vice versa is true. That when the price is low, when there is a decrease in the price in the market for a certain good or service, automatically the quantity supplied will decrease. However, there are some factors that may violate this law. But under normal circumstances, we are saying that as the price of the commodity decreases, the quantity supplied decreases, and we back up this assumption by what we call the ceteris paribus condition. The ceteris paribus condition. This condition states that other factors remain constant. An increase in the price will lead to an increase in quantity supplied, and a decrease in price will lead to a decrease in quantity supplied. So this one is the law of supply. We are going to use the same law of supply to draw the supply curve and the supply schedule. But before I do that, let us go back now to the factors that affect the supply for the commodity. I hope the law of supply is clearly understood. Okay. Well, now let us go back to the factors. That affect supply for the commodity. We said that one of the factors is the objective of the firm. So firms have two different objectives. These are business entities, okay? These are production entities. They are business entities. They normally produce different goods and services, and they supply them to the market. But as they produce, there are some objectives to be met when producing the goods and the services. One of the objectives of the firm is profit maximization. Profit maximization. This is one of the objectives of the firm. Now, how does it affect quantity supplied in the market? For example, if the objective of the firm is to maximize the profit, it will normally tend to increase the price. It will normally tend to increase price for the good that it is producing. But now in this case, let us consider the profit maximization as the objective of the firm vis-a-vis the quantity of goods to be supplied in the market. If the objective of the firm is to maximize the profit, automatically few quantities will be supplied to the market. But they will expect that these quantities to be supplied in the market, the price for these goods will be higher, so that they get much profit. So there will be a higher price for these goods, but the quantities will be low. So you supply less to the market, but with higher price, you maximize your profit. Remember, profit is obtained by taking total revenue minus total cost. So to get total revenue in this case, total revenue is equal to price times quantity. This is how we get total revenue, okay? This is how we get total revenue. Profit. When a firm is calculating profit, it will normally tend to less total cost from total revenue. You take the amount of revenue that you obtained by producing goods and services, you less the total costs that you incur in producing those goods and services. But now in this case, total revenue, these revenues here, of course we don't have a problem with these costs, but the revenues, how do we get the revenues? The revenues are obtained by taking the price of the good times the quantities of that goods, the quantities produced of the goods or services. That is why I was saying that when the objective of the firm is to maximize the profit, in some circumstances it will tend to lower the quantity but to increase the price of those quantities supplied to the market. Now the vice versa is for the second objective of the firm, which is sales maximization. Sales maximization, okay? Sales maximization. This is another objective of the firm. The first one is profit maximization, and the second one here is the sales maximization, meaning that the objective of the firm in this case is to maximize sales. It can be doing this in order maybe to reduce the stock. The stock, maybe if it has more stock of the commodity, maybe to reduce the stock, but it may have this objective as the strategy to maximize profit through sales. You can maximize the profit through sales revenue maximization. So in this case, the producer will tend to supply more to the market, but at less price. But that price should be at least, it should be a market price. It should be a market price. When I talk of a lesser price, I mean this price is a market price, an agreed price, but at least this price is lower compared to when you are when your objective is to maximize profit. So under sales revenue maximization, a firm will tend to maximize sales, will tend to supply more of these goods in order to maximize sales, but by doing that you have to lower the price for the price for the good or service. So this one is the first factor which affects the supply for the commodity. The other factor would be the price of the commodity. Price of the commodity is our second factor, the price of the commodity. Remember from the from the law of supply, we said that the higher the price, the higher the quantity supplied. The higher the price, the higher the quantity supplied. So it means that supply will be high. Supply will be high when there is higher price in the market. So when the producers find out that there is an increase in the price of the goods in the market, they will tend to increase the supply for the commodity. But if the price is lower in the market, let's take an example of, take an example of these normal goods, for example, shoes, for example, shoes. If the price of shoes is lower, maybe they have discovered that the price of shoes has decreased. Let's say from take these normal shoes, let's say from 20,000, let's say to 15. I'm using this as an hypothetical example. Of course, the price of shoes tend to vary based on the quality, based on the size, etc., etc. But let's take an example that the price of shoes has decreased from 20,000 to 15,000. These shoes suppliers will tend to decrease the supply of shoes to the market. So this is how the price affects the quantity supplied to the market. The other factor is the price of the related good. Price of the related good. We have used an abbreviation of PR to mean the price of the related good. Related goods, as we discussed in the previous video, that we have two related goods. We have substitute, and we have complement. So substitute goods are the goods which they tend to compete each other. There is a competition between the two goods. These goods they serve. We normally say that these goods, they tend to serve the same purpose. For example, we use an example of tea and coffee. Tea and coffee. This is an example we use. The same explanation can be applied to the complement goods which are supplied together. Complement goods are the goods which are demanded or which are supplied together. For example, we used an example of car and petrol. Okay. The other factor is the expectations of future change in the price. I have used an abbreviation, future change in the price. So this one also affects the quantity supplied in the market, because if suppliers, for example, expect the price to increase in the future, they will lower supply today. Supply today will be lower, so that they can increase supply in the future when the price has increased. So these scenarios tend to affect the quantity supplied of a commodity. Quantity supplied of a commodity. And the other factor under the theory of supply, the other factor which affects the supply for the commodity is the state of technology. The state of technology. Technology is an important factor that influence production. Okay, when you are using a modern technology, we expect that you can produce more quantities than when you are using old technology. For example, if you are using what we call labor-intensive technique of production, you are using more laborers than capital to produce a commodity. We expect that the quantity supplied of this commodity will be lower compared to when you are using the capital intensive. Take an example of agriculture. Take an example of the agriculture sector. If you find that in the agriculture sector one is using more laborers than the one who is using maybe tractors and the other machines, we expect that the person using tractors and the other machines to produce, say, maize, is using tractors, is using modern irrigation schemes, is using intensified machines and so forth, we expect that this person who is a capital intensive, who is using capital intensive, will have more supply. He will produce more of maize than the person who is using more laborers than machines. Therefore, this is how the state of technology affects the quantity supplied of the commodity, and that is why more countries are trying to come up with modified technologies in their production activities, because when you use modern technologies, we expect that you are going to reduce costs. First of all, you reduce the costs of production, and by reducing the cost of production, you are going to get more profit. Okay, you get more profit because you have lowered the cost by using the technology which is more cost effective compared to when you are using the technology which is more costly. Therefore, the state of technology will normally affect the quantity supplied to the market. Now there are many other factors to explain the supply to explain the factors that affects the supply of a commodity to the market, and here we have mentioned 5, but if you think there are many other factors, you can just add them, let's say number 6 to any other number, but we represent those factors by a symbol called Z. This Z will mean other factors, or in econometrics we can use the error term to mean that there are many other factors that may explain the relationship. Okay, there are many other factors like the taste and the preference can be another factor. If there is high taste and the preference in the market for your product, you will tend to increase the supply for that commodity. Okay, if people they prefer your good, the goods that you are producing, of course automatically the supply will increase because there is more taste and the preference of that commodity. You can think of another factor like weather and conditions. For example, in the agriculture sector, when the weather is okay, we expect that the quantity supplied of the goods will increase. For example, during the rainfall, people will tend to prepare different harvests. We will have many harvests, and therefore the supply of agricultural inputs, the supply of agricultural products to the market is likely to increase when the weather is favorable than when the weather is not favorable. Therefore, there are many other factors to be considered when you are talking about the factors that affect the supply for the commodity. But for the purpose of this short lecture, we have identified at least 7 factors, but you can add as many as you can. When you are adding the factors, try to back up with a very detailed explanation and maybe some real world examples.